So for today's lesson, we will be talking about vocabulary and specifically how to basically get the most out of a piece of vocabulary that you have in your arsenal. I found a lot of times that when I would play tunes, that I would have kind of some go-to things that I would play over those 2/5s or whatever, but was never really able to incorporate stuff I was really working on, something I got out of a transcription or something that I was assigned to learn. Uh, I found it hard sometimes to get that incorporated into my playing. So I went about and found some strategies in order to get that in on certain tunes and on just being able to do more with it than just play, boom, this little piece of vocabulary. So
this instructional video is actually going to be broken down into a couple of parts. The first part is going to actually just involve playing the actual material. So we'll work on playing it in all 12 keys, both in the context of playing it through the circle of fourths and fifths, up chromatically, up minor thirds, and just however many combinations that you can get through. And then that will also include plugging it in exactly as the piece of material is into a context of a tune. In this case, it will be "It Could Happen to You." So we'll work on playing the exact piece of language in the tune in situations that it fits exactly right. And then the second part of this instructional video is going to be focusing on making little adjustments that you can make to it to make it fit in other contexts. For instance, taking a couple of key notes in the piece of material and altering it slightly so that you can play it over, in this case, a minor 2/5 chord. Since the piece of material we'll be playing was going to be based off of a major 2/5. And also within that part we will work on also making little adjustments to it, so taking notes out, adding them in, putting on other little small phrases that you've learned in your vernacular, that give it a little more sense of personality and more than just copy and pasting the licks. Because a lot of times people think by incorporating pieces of vocabulary into your playing that you kind of become a lick player, someone who just regurgitates little phrases and idioms that they hear without any real sense of individuality in their playing. So we'll work on making small adjustments to these phrases so that all of a sudden they're now yours instead of whoever you got them from. And then the final part of this is going to actually talk specifically about composite solos, which is a tool that I think is incredibly helpful for working on incorporating vocabulary into your playing or just getting anything that you want into your playing. So, and I'll talk more about that later.
So the first step that you're going to want to actually take as far as getting this material ready to go for whatever gigs you have coming up is to actually just learn it in all 12 keys. So for this lesson, I'm focusing on one basic idea that I learned for a 2/5/1 that takes about 1 bar for each chord. So 1 bar for the 2 chord, 1 bar for the 5 chord, and then it resolves to the 1. So this idea is a 2/5/1 to C major, and it starts on the 5 of the 2 chord in this case, which is D minor, and it's A is the starting note. And in context, it starts on the and of 1. So A, C, E, D, C, B, A, G, G, B, D, F, B flat, A flat, G. So you see that B flat, A flat are that's the sharp 9 and the flat 9 of the G7 chord. If you're not familiar with it, is a great sound to produce more harmonic dissonance as you're building in as the dominant chord, which is supposed to be moving harmonically forward the phrase. And that's why I like this phrase so much, is because it has both the sharp and the flat 9 as part of the resolution. And so now we need to work on it in all 12 keys. So let's go up. Let's go through this cycle of fourths. So we'll play the original key one more time. 2, 5, 1 to C major. D minor is the 2 chord, so it's on the 5, which is A. 1, 2, 3. So the next key, if we're going to do the circle of fourths, is going to be a 2, 5, 1 to F. Starts on the 2 chord, which is G minor. D is the 5th, which is our starting note. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we play B flat. 2 is C. 5 of that is G. 1, 2, 3, 4. Another way you can think about it too is you could just think about the starting note in relation to the key center. So in this case, I just played a 2, 5, 1 to B flat, and the starting note was the 5 of the 2, which is C or G. Or you can just think about it as being the 6, exactly. So the 6. So the next key is E flat. The major 6th is C. 1, 2, 3, 4. This takes a little bit of the work out of it. So let's do 2, 5, 1 to A flat. 2, 5, 1 to D flat, which starts on this major 6th, to B flat. 1, 2, 3, 4. In this case, it's A flat 7 is the 5, and the sharp 9 of A flat is C flat, and the flat 9 is A. It gets a really cool sound. So now let's do G flat. This is where it starts to get hairy, and you might have to practice it slower. But it's important that you learn even these really gross keys like D flat and G flat and B and E and A, because they will pop up. They will show up in tunes. So G flat starts on a major 6, which is E flat. See, even I gotta keep working on it. One more time. Good. Now let's do 2, 5, 1 to B. Starts on a major 6, which is A flat or G sharp. 1, 2. Good. So 2, 5, 1 to E, which starts on C sharp. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. 2, 5, 1 to A. Starts on F sharp. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's important to know all these scale degrees and for each of these keys. So I know that if I'm going to play an E7, that the sharp 9 is going to be G natural and the flat 9 is going to be F, and you should just be able to pull those out of a hat. So with that said, 2, 5, 1 to D. Starts on B. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 5, 1 to G. It starts on E. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 5, 1 back to C. Starts on A. And we're back at the beginning. It's good to learn it that way, be able to play it the other way, so backwards through in the circle of fifths instead of fourths. It's also good to be able to go up chromatically. So 2-5-1 to C. 2-5-1 to D flat. 2-5-1 to D. 2-5-1 to E flat. 2-5-1 to E. 2-5-1 to F. Nope. 2-5-1 to F sharp. Ooh, that's the hairy one. That was one I was having a problem with earlier. 2-5-1 to G. I actually find that chromatic might be easier because you just have to smooth the starting note up and the shape is almost the same. And on trombone, a lot of times you can just play everything one position up or down. So let's say 2-5-1 to G. Yeah. Good. And so once you got that down, then the next step is you're going to pick a tune that you want to play this idea in. And so for this case, it's going to be It Could Happen to You. And then you want to play it in the tune only in context where it fits exactly right. This is just to get it started, get the basic idea going in your brain with this tune, and you're connecting it more to a moving harmony rather than sort of a static 4-bar phrase, 4-bar phrase, etc. So here's that. And I want to emphasize playing it slow, because especially if you're just starting to get these ideas going inside of tunes, you want to play it slowly so that in less time you can play it more times accurately and build more repetition over and over of playing it correctly and playing it in the exact context. And when you play it slower, it gives your brain a little bit of extra time to think and sort it through. So here's the 2-5 in context, and I'm going to be playing it over starting on the 9th bar, starting on the 12th bar, and I'm also going to play it on the 14th bar. So in the B section, the 2-5-1 to E flat, the 2-5-1 to B flat that doesn't resolve, and then the 2-5-1 to E flat that does resolve. And then I'm going to play it in both the 2-5-1 to E flats in the C section. Cool. Here we go. See, I'm leaving space, so you can actually take a second and think about what's coming out. It's like, okay, 2-5-1 to E flat. Okay, 2-5-1 to B flat. With this, and it'll get the tune more in your ear, the harmonic movement. Let's try it a little bit faster. The next step that we're going to take is we're going to see if we can find situations where you can play this piece of raw material in with little tweaks in other situations. So we're going to start by seeing if we can put it into a minor 2/5 context. In this case, the 7th and 8th bar of the tune. So now, instead of playing a 2/5-1 to F major, we're playing it as a 2/5-1 to F minor. Instead of playing you're going to want to make the 5 a flatted 5th on the G minor, 7 flat 5, and then you're going to want to make that A an A flat. And you're going to also want to play a D flat again when you're playing it over the C7 flat 9. So instead of this, it sounds like this. One more time. So let's see how that sounds. I'm going to, starting on the 4th bar. We'll start from the beginning. Sounds pretty good. I think it's good. So you can add that in. And then the next step would be to find situations where we can try it out and see if it sounds good. So say over the first 2 bars, because you've got E flat major 7, and then you can play the second bar as G minor 7 flat 5 to C7 flat 9, which is exactly what we played, except it's just over 1 bar instead of 2. So let's see if we can plug that in at the very beginning. See, it's close. It's so close. All you got to do is make that first note, which is a D flat, make it a D natural because it's an E flat major 7 chord. And then it'll sound great. But other than that, it sounded pretty good. Here we go. It works. It works great. So let's try it in the situation that seems like it would fit next, which is the 3rd and the 4th bar, which is the 4th bar is F sharp diminished or a 2/5-1 to G minor that resolves to E flat. But let's see if we can try that minor transposed to fit this. So in this case, instead of playing you gotta play let's try that, see if it works. I'm also going to play the first one. That works great because it resolves down to the major 7. Let's try taking that idea, the major M minor, and we'll plug it in over the entire tune. Starting with the minor 2/5 to F, and we're starting on the first bar. 2, 3, 4. See, it works. Well, in practice, it might sound a little bit monotonous to play the same idea over and over and over again, but what this does is it ingrains it so that when you're playing, you don't have to really think about it. It's become, as soon as you hear that C minor 7 voicing, you're like, oh, okay, I know this is a 2-5, so I can play this idea, boom. Or I can play this minor idea over this minor 2-5 to F minor. So the next step that you can do once you get that to sound pretty good is that you can actually start to modify it a little bit and make it a little bit more of your own, so that it's not just this one piece of vocabulary that they're a lick, as they say, that you're just playing over and over, and you plug it in and then you move on and then you plug it in again and then you move on, which is what we just did. So what you can do is you can take notes out, you can add extra stuff on the end, you can condense it, or you can expand it. So here's an example of, take a couple of notes out. You just take the first 2 notes out instead of you take out the A and the C and you start on the end of 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. You'll be astonished how much taking just those 2 notes out can totally change how it sounds for a listener. They'll catch that and they'll be like, oh wow, he's not just playing licks, or she's not just playing licks, they're playing new ideas that are always changing. Another thing that you can do is you can actually add more onto the end. So I'm going to take the first 2 notes out and I'm going to add a little bit onto the end of something that you might already know. 1, 2, 3, 4. Or so you can add those little tiny bits onto the end, and that just gives it a little bit more of resolve, and or just a little extra meat for someone to grab onto. One thing that you can also do is, in this case, it's got an arpeggio-based idea. And if you want to change it up a little bit, instead of starting on the root, you could start on the 3rd. So. And then if you take those little bits out, it'll land you right on the 3rd. 1, 2, 3, 4. So 2-5-1 to C major. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Now you have like the same basic idea, but you've tweaked it, and so you've kind of made it more of your own. And then you can go through and take that piece of vocabulary and play it through the tune in all of the 2-5 contexts, and then find out how it fits like over the minor 2-5s. If you're looking for a way to make it a little bit easier to get these different varied ways of approaching one piece of vocabulary into your playing, what you can actually do is take them all and write them out on paper as like I call it a composite solo, or just a written out solo. And what that does is, if you take that material, you put it in, you can get a lot of time to think about what you want where, and why you want it there, and make it all fit nice, and gives you more compositional time, basically, instead of just having to play it boom on the fly right when the tune, they give you the count off 1, 2, 3, 4, and now you got to play material. So The other great thing about the composite solo too is that you can take it and you memorize it. So you write it out, you memorize it, you plug in all the things that you've been working on, and then once you have it memorized, you can play the composite solo, or you can play just a little part of it, or you can play a little tiny piece or a big piece, or you can play a whole chorus, or you can lead yourself into playing just this one section that you think sounds really cool. And working on composite solos gives you more material that you can just play right out of the gate if you memorize it and get it really under your fingers. The final part of this is actually just going to be me. I'm going to play an example of a composite solo based off of the idea, and it's going to include all the little figures that we talked about, expanding it, making it smaller, playing it over different key centers in different situations, like in minor contexts, or in a 2-5-1 that's over one bar, like at the beginning. And then I also have a couple of instances where I started on different chord tones, and I overall just like changed the phrase up so that it doesn't sound exactly the same all the time. And so here it is. See, there's a lot of ways. Even if you just put in like a little tiny phrase that you stole from something else, and it gives it that kind of clarity, and having repetition of an idea and developing that idea shows a great ability for an improviser to be a greater composer, as far as having the memory and the musical care to actually take a single idea and expand on it, and or contract it or make it different, while also having that continuity. Continuity is so important for listeners, because if you're a listener, you're always looking for patterns and things that repeat, and that will almost always across the board make a listener more interested, as if you play an idea that's repeated or based off of a certain idea. So I hope this helps. Here's an example of a composite solo that I made for It Could Happen to You. And this is something I wrote out a little while ago that includes material from Miles Davis, Dexter Gordon, Steve Davis, and also Kenny Durham. Here's this. I'm going to start on the last 8 bars of the melody. Steve Davis. Kenny Durham.
I hope you found this instructional video helpful in your endeavors of playing hip vocabulary whenever you want to and whatever tunes that you want to. Just keep on practicing, incorporating vocabulary. Take this one concept and you can do it with anything that you're wanting in your playing that you've transcribed or you've heard. And yeah, keep on swinging.